Get your filthy delivery hands off that stage. You reek of sweat and other people's dinners." Kemi flicked her wine. A slow, deliberate arc of red across Amara's portfolio. "You, a designer? You carry rice in a bag for a living." "These drawings are mine," Amara said quietly. Poor girls own nothing but their debts. 200 guests at the Adeyemi Gala went dead silent. Not one fork moved. A woman near the front actually smiled behind her glass. Amara knelt. She gathered each soaked page with steady, bare hands, wiping the wine from her mother's design with her own sleeve. No tears. But the heiress screaming across that ballroom had no idea. The silent man by the door, the one every waiter had mistaken for a driver all evening, was about 90 seconds away from ending her dynasty. Man, this one still gives me goosebumps. Pour yourself something, hit that subscribe button, and tell me in the comments where in the world you are watching from. But to understand how a girl ended up on her knees on the most important night of her life, we have to go back exactly 4 months. To a Tuesday morning. To the day she spent her last 300 naira on bread for a starving old man she had never met. Amara Okoli woke that morning at 4:40. Not to an alarm. She had trained her body to wake before the alarm years ago, because the delivery app paid a bonus to riders who logged in before the 5 o'clock rush, and the bonus was 200 naira, and 200 naira mattered. It mattered more than sleep. It mattered more than almost anything. She lay still for a minute in the dark. Listening, the compound was quiet, except for the generator 2 doors down that never fully switched off. She could hear her own breathing. She could hear the tin roof ticking as the night let go of its heat. Then she got up. Her room was small. 1 window, 1 mattress on a raised wooden frame her mother had built, with her own hands, 11 years ago. 1 plastic table, 1 chair. On the table sat a wooden box the size of a Bible. She touched the lid the way some people touch a religious object as they pass it. Not opening it, just touching. Then she pulled on her jacket, grabbed the delivery bag, and left. The bike was old. A red Bajaj she had bought secondhand for 90,000 naira. Saved coin by coin, and she treated it better than she treated herself. She fed it fuel before she fed herself food. The engine caught on the second kick, and she rolled out into a Lagos that was still deciding whether to wake up. By 7 o'clock, she had done 4 drops. By 8, she had done 7. The customers were the usual mix. A woman in Yaba, who tipped 50 naira and thanked her by name. A man in Surulere, who complained that his food was cold and demanded a partial refund, which the app granted from Amara's own earnings. Not the restaurants. That was how it worked. When the customer was unhappy, the rider bled. She had stopped arguing about it months ago. Arguing cost time, and time was drops. And drops were the debt. The debt. It sat in her chest like a second heartbeat. 2,300,000 naira. She could recite the figure in her sleep. It had started at 1,800,000, which was the true amount her mother's final hospital stay had cost. But Aunt Ronki, who had paid the hospital when Amara could not, had a gift for arithmetic that only ever moved in one direction. Interest, Aunt Ronki called it. The interest of family. The interest of being inconvenienced. Every few months the number climbed, and every few months Amara wrote it down in the back of her delivery logbook, and every few months she looked at the gap between what she owed and what she earned, and felt the floor tilt. She was thinking about that gap when she saw the old man. It was on Adeniran Ogunsanya Street, near the corner where a bread seller named Fabian ran a wooden stall under a faded umbrella. Amara had a 9-minute wait for her next order to come in, so she had pulled over to breathe, and she saw him. An old man, maybe 70, maybe more, in a shirt that had once been good and was now just clean. He was standing at the bread stall with his hand out, and Fabian was leaning over the counter with his face folded into contempt. "I forgot my wallet at home," the old man was saying. "My grandson is coming. Just one loaf. He will pay you the moment he arrives. I give you my word." "Your word," Fabian laughed. "Old man, do I look like I run a charity? Do I look like a church? I am not begging. I am telling you he is coming. They all say somebody is coming." Fabian waved a hand as if shooing a fly. "Move away from my stall. You are blocking real customers. Go and stand somewhere else with your empty pockets, you shameless old man." And then he shoved him. It was not a hard shove. But the old man was old, and his sandals were smooth on the bottom, and he stumbled sideways and caught himself against the umbrella pole with a grunt. Amara was off her bike before she had decided to be. "Papa. Papa, are you all right?" "I am fine, my daughter." His voice shook a little. "I am fine." She turned to Fabian. "Why did you push him? Is he your father?" "That is not the point. He is an old man. You do not put your hands on an old man over a loaf of bread. He wanted bread he could not pay for. He told you his grandson was coming. Then let the grandson come and buy it." Fabian crossed his arms. His eyes went up and down Amara's dusty jacket, her delivery bag, her cracked helmet hanging off the mirror. His mouth curled. "And who are you?" "Another one who cannot afford anything. You people who ride these bikes, you think you are police. Mind your delivery and go." Amara did not answer him. She reached into the inner pocket of her jacket, the one with the button, the one where she kept the money that was not to be touched. The fuel money, the emergency money. 300 naira, folded twice. How much is one loaf? Fabian looked at her. She saw him calculate. She saw him decide to punish her for the interruption. 150. It had been 100 a moment ago. She knew it. He knew she knew it. "Give him 2, she said. 2? 2 loaves. And here." She put the 300 on the counter. "Keep the change out of it if the math offends you." Fabian took the money. He bagged 2 loaves with the sullen slowness of a man who had lost something and could not say what. Amara took the bag and turned to the old man and put it in his hands. "Here, Papa. Sit down first. You look tired. Eat something." The old man held the bread against his chest. He did not eat. He looked at her for a long moment, and something moved behind his eyes that she did not understand and would not understand for 4 months. "So many people passed me this morning," he said. "They saw. Not one of them stopped. And you, who have dust on your hands and worry on your face, you stopped." Amara felt her throat tighten. She did not know why. Maybe because her mother, in the last year, had also stood in places with her hand out. Not for bread, for a bed, for a nurse to come when she rang, for a doctor to look at her before the money ran out. And people had passed her too. "Are you hurt anywhere?" she asked, to have something to say. "No. You caught me in time. Do you want me to call your grandson for you?" "He is coming." The old man's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "He is always coming. He is a very busy young man. Too busy to remember that his grandfather is old. Then he should learn to come earlier." That made the old man laugh out loud, a real laugh, and it surprised them both. "What is your name, my daughter?" "Amara. Amara," he tasted it. "A good name. You have a good heart, Amara. You will make somebody a very fine wife one day." "Papa, please." She almost laughed herself, but it came out tired. "I am not thinking about marriage." "Why not?" "A girl your age." "Because marriage does not pay debt. I am not looking for a husband. I am looking for a job that does not disappear at the end of every week, and a way to pay what I owe, and one full night of sleep. That is my whole ambition. That is the entire list." The old man's face changed. The teasing left it. What replaced it was quieter and harder to look at. "You are too young to be carrying this. Life does not check your age before it hands you the load, Papa." She glanced at her phone. The next order had come in. A restaurant in Ikeja, 12 minutes away, and the clock was already running. "I have to go. I am sorry. Take this." She pulled a scrap of paper from her bag, wrote a number on it with the pen she kept clipped to her collar, and pressed it into his palm. "That is my number. If you need anything, if you are stuck somewhere, or you feel unwell, or your grandson forgets you again, call me. I cannot promise much, but I can at least come." The old man closed his fingers around the paper as if it were currency. "Amara," he said, "God will not forget this." "Then let him remember it as a discount on my debt," she said, already swinging her leg over the bike. And she was gone, into the noise, before he could answer. She did not look back. If she had teeth, she would have seen the old man walk not toward a bus stop, and not toward the shuffling gait of a man with nowhere to be, but toward the corner where, 30 seconds later, a black Land Cruiser with tinted windows pulled up. She would have seen a driver hurry out to open the door. She would have seen the old man fold the scrap of paper very carefully and put it in his breast pocket, over his heart, before he got in. But she did not look back. She had a delivery. The man who stepped out of the second car, the one that arrived 4 minutes too late, was 31 years old and used to being obeyed by everyone he had ever met. His name was Tunde Adeyemi. His face was calm in the particular way of men who have learned that calm is a kind of power, and his eyes moved over a scene and priced everything in it before he had finished walking. He was the chief executive of the Adeyemi Group, which owned real estate, 2 hotels, an oil services arm, and, as of 6 weeks ago, a small but respected jewelry and design house called Solis Designs. Very few people outside his boardroom would have recognized his face. He preferred it that way. A face nobody knows is a face that can go anywhere. Grandfather. He crossed to the old man, who was now sitting on a low wall, eating bread with unbothered enjoyment. "I am sorry." The meeting ran long. "You are late," Chief Bello Adeyemi said, not looking up. "I said I am sorry." "You are late. And because you are late, you let your wife get away." Tunde stopped. "My what? Your wife." The old man tore off another piece of bread. "I found her this morning. A good girl. The best girl I have seen in 10 years. She bought me this bread when that dog behind the stall pushed me down, and not one other person on this whole street lifted a finger." "He pushed you." Tunde's voice dropped half an octave, and the driver standing nearby took an involuntary step back. "Grandfather, who pushed you? Leave him. He is nothing. The girl already fought him for me." The old man's face softened into that same look Amara had not understood. "Her name is Amara. She has respect. She has kindness. She did not know me from Adam. She had dust on her hands and trouble in her eyes, and she still stopped, and she still paid, and she paid with money she clearly could not spare. Not like those women who only smile when they see the size of your car." "Grandfather." Tunde pinched the bridge of his nose. "I am not marrying a stranger because she bought you bread." "Did I say marry her today?" "I said find her. You don't even know where she went." Chief Bello reached into his breast pocket and held up the scrap of paper between 2 fingers, the way a magician reveals the card. "She gave me her number," he said, "in case I ever needed help. Now tell me, in this whole rotten city, How many people do you know who give a stranger their number and mean it? Tundi looked at the paper. He looked at his grandfather. He had the sudden, sinking sense, the one he'd had all his life around this man, that a door had just opened somewhere, and he was going to be pushed through it, whether he liked it or not. "You are being dramatic," he said. "And you are still single at 31, the old man said serenely. "So perhaps drama has better judgment than you do." Tunde did not answer. There was no winning with his grandfather once the old man had decided a thing was fated. He had learned that the hard way, more than once, over more than one thing. The call came the next afternoon. Amara was between drops, sitting in the thin shade of a bus stop, eating a 50 naira sachet of biscuits that was standing in for lunch when her phone rang with a number she did not know. "Hello, my daughter. Is this Amara?" She sat up straight. "Papa? Is that you?" "The bread. Are you all right?" "My chest." The old voice was thin, frightened. "My chest is tight, Amara. My eyes are going strange. I do not know what is wrong with me. I did not know who else to call. Where are you?" She was already on her feet, biscuit forgotten in the dirt. "Papa, listen to me. Do not move. Where are you? Are you sitting down? Can you send me the address? I will send it. Can you come?" "Yes, yes, of course I am coming. Just send it now, Papa. Stay where you are." The address came through as a pin drop in Ikoyi. She looked at it and felt a small, cold flicker, because Ikoyi was where the money lived. And the address the pin sat on top of was not a bus stop, or a market, or a roadside where a poor old man might collapse. It was a house. A large one, set back behind a wall, on a street where the trees were older than her grandmother. But she did not stop to think about that. She thought, "He is dying, and he called me." So she rode. She ran 2 amber lights and cut across a lane a Danfo driver cursed her for, and she made the 25-minute ride in 17 minutes. And she left the bike half on the curb with the keys still in it, and pounded on the gate. A gateman let her in without a word, as if he had been told to expect her. The house inside the wall was the kind of house Amara had only ever delivered food to. Standing at the servant's entrance while a cook signed for it. Marble floor. A ceiling that went up 2 stories. A staircase that curved. And in the middle of an enormous sitting room, in an armchair the size of her entire bed, sat the old man. He looked wonderful. Rested, upright, a cup of tea steaming beside him. He did not look like a man whose chest was tight and whose eyes were going strange. He looked like a man who had just enjoyed a very good breakfast. Amara stopped in the doorway. She looked at him. She looked at the tea. She looked at him again, standing behind the armchair, arms folded, wearing the flat expression of a man who has lost an argument and is being forced to watch the consequences, was a tall young man in a dark shirt. Handsome, cold around the eyes. Familiar somehow, though she was certain she had never met him. "Papa," she said slowly, "were you actually sick?" "I was," Chief Bello said. "Uncomfortable. You sounded like you were dying. I may have exaggerated the chest." "You may have." Amara put a hand to her forehead. The adrenaline was still roaring through her and it had nowhere to go, and it turned, the way it does, into anger. "Papa, I left work. I ran red lights. I left my bike on the road with the key in it. Do you know what that costs if someone takes it? Do you know what that bike is to me? I thought you were dying alone somewhere and I came, and you are sitting here drinking tea? I am sorry, my daughter." And he did look, briefly, sorry. Then he did not. "But, look, you came. You dropped everything and you came for an old man you met once, who has nothing to give you. That is what I needed to see. That is not fair. Very little in life is fair," the old man said. "Sit down. You are shaking." Kofo, bring her water. A woman appeared from nowhere with a glass on a tray. Amara did not sit. The young man behind the chairs spoke for the first time. His voice was low and even, and it matched the coldness of his eyes. You should sit. He has gone to a great deal of trouble to be this ridiculous. The least you can do is let him enjoy it. Amara looked at him properly for the first time. And here is the thing she noticed, the thing that would matter later. Even furious, even tricked. She still crossed the room first to the old man, put the back of her hand to his forehead the way you check a child, felt for the pulse at his wrist, made certain, actually certain, that the trembling voice on the phone had been a lie, and not a warning. Only when she was sure he was truly well did she straighten up and turn her anger loose. Tunde watched her do it, and something in him, some cold and careful thing that had been sitting in the same position for 3 years, shifted a quarter inch. Amara, the old man said. This is my grandson, Tunde. Good afternoon, she said stiffly. Good afternoon. He is 31, Chief Bello continued, as though reading from a market listing. Handsome, as you can see. Responsible. Runs the family business. And, most importantly, unmarried. Grandfather. Tunde closed his eyes briefly. What? Am I lying? Are you married? Have you been hiding a wife somewhere? Papa, Amara cut in. I already told you yesterday. I am not thinking about marriage. And I am certainly not marrying a stranger, because you tricked me across town with a fake heart attack. Nonsense. You are exactly the age to be thinking about it, and he is exactly the man, and I am exactly the person to arrange it. And I am exactly the person who is leaving. She set the untouched water down. Papa, I am glad you are well, I mean that. But you cannot do this to people. You cannot pretend to die. Next time it will be real and I will not believe you, and then where will you be? That landed. She saw it land. The old man's face went still, and for a moment he was just an old man who was afraid of exactly that. Sit, he said quietly. Please. 5 minutes. Then if you want to go, my driver will take your bike home behind you, and you will never have to see us again. But sit 5 minutes. Let an old man apologize properly. She sat, and that was how it started. Not with romance. Not with a wedding in an afternoon, which is the kind of thing that happens in stories, and never once in life. It started with an apology, and a glass of water, and a conversation that went longer than 5 minutes, because the old man was clever and lonely. And Amara, underneath the exhaustion, was starving for someone to simply talk to her, as if her time were worth something. He asked about her work. She told him. He asked about the debt, and she was too tired to be proud. So she told him that too. All of it. The mother who had cleaned other people's houses for 20 years and never once been sick, until she was suddenly, expensively sick. The aunt who paid the bill and had been feeding on it ever since, the wooden box on the plastic table. What is in the box? The old man asked. Her things. What is left of her? A wrapper she wore to church, her reading glasses. A string of beads my father gave her before he became the kind of man who leaves. Amara's hands moved in her lap without her permission. My aunt has been threatening to throw it all away. She says I use up space in her family's memory without paying rent on it. She has given me until the end of next month, 2.3 million, or she burns the box. The room was quiet. That is a wicked thing to say to a person, Chief Bello said. She is a wicked person, Amara said simply. But she is my mother's sister, and she did pay the hospital when no one else would, and both of those things are true at the same time, and I have not figured out how to hold them yet. Tunde, by the window now, said nothing, but he was listening. He had been listening to the whole thing, and he had noticed that not once, not one single time, had she asked the old man for money. She had told the story of a debt that was crushing her, in the home of a man who plainly had more money than God, and she had not so much as glanced at his pockets. He had spent 3 years assuming everyone glanced at his pockets. It was, in fact, the organizing principle of his adult life. "Here is what I will do," Chief Bello said. "I will not marry you off. You have made yourself very clear, and you are right and I was wrong. But I will offer you a job. Papa, not charity, work, real work, with a contract, with a salary, and an advance." He held up a hand before she could refuse. "I am an old man living in a large house, with too many stairs, and a grandson who is too busy to visit. I need a personal assistant. Someone to manage my appointments, drive me to my doctor, argue with me about my diet, and generally make sure I do not die alone in a chair the way I nearly convinced you I was doing today. 3 months to start. If we cannot stand each other, we part as friends. If we can, we discuss more." Amara looked at him. Every alarm she owned was ringing. Rich people did not simply hand jobs to delivery girls they had met at a bread stall. There was always a catch, a price, a hand that reached for something in the dark. "What is the salary?" she asked. "Enough to make the number in the back of your logbook start going down instead of up," the old man said. "We will put it in writing. My lawyer will draw it up so that you are protected, not me. You will read every line. You will sign nothing you do not understand. And the advance against your first 3 months will be enough to pay your aunt her 2.3 million and get your mother's box out of that woman's house by the end of this week." Amara did not answer for a long time. "Why?" she finally said. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" "Because 40 people walked past me yesterday," the old man said. "And you were the one who stopped. I have spent my whole life around people who stop for what they can get. You are the first in a long time who stopped for what she could give. That is not a thing I can buy. So when I find it, I do not let it walk back into the traffic." She took the job. She read every line of the contract twice, made the lawyer explain 2 clauses she found suspicious, negotiated a term about her own hours, and signed only after she was satisfied. Tunde watched her do that too. The lawyer, afterward, told him privately that in 15 years he had never had a domestic staff member. Read a contract that carefully, and that if she ever got tired of assisting old men, she would make a formidable one herself. The advance cleared Aunt Ronki's account on a Thursday. Amara drove to her aunt's house that evening in Chief Bello's car, with Chief Bello's driver, and she did not gloat and she did not explain. She simply said the debt was settled, showed the transfer confirmation on her phone, and asked for her mother's box. Aunt Ronki's face went through several expensive-looking emotions. Where did a delivery girl get 2.3 million naira in a week? Whose money was this? What had Amara done? What had she become? What shameful thing was she now mixed up in that could produce that kind of cash that fast? "I got a job," Amara said. "The box, Auntie." She carried it out to the car herself. She would not let the driver touch it, and when she got home she set it back on the plastic table and opened it for the first time in months. And she took out the string of beads, and she held them up to the light, and she looked at them for a long time. Blue and white, and one central bead, the color of deep water, chipped on one side. Cheap. Worthless to anyone. The only thing of her father's that her mother had kept, and the only thing of her mother's that Amara would have run into a fire for. She did not know yet that those beads were about to change her entire life. She only knew that they were safe. For the first time in a year, they were safe. She fell asleep with them still in her hand. The disguise was Tunde's idea, and it was, he would admit much later, one of the more childish decisions he had made as an adult. His grandfather had hired the girl. Fine. His grandfather had gotten his way, as he always did. But Tunde was not going to simply hand a stranger the knowledge that she now lived and worked inside the orbit of one of the richest men in the country. He had been burned by exactly that knowledge before. He knew what it did to people. He had watched it change the faces of people he loved, watched their smiles get calculating, watched women he had cared for begin to price him the way he priced a scene. So he made a decision. As far as Amara was concerned, he would not be the chief executive of the Adeyemi Group. He would be what she had already assumed him to be. On the day she walked in and saw a man in a dark shirt standing behind a chair, staff. He would be the family driver. Marcus, his actual head of security and the only man alive he trusted without conditions, would play the visiting executive on the rare occasions one was needed. Marcus thought it was insane. He said so. "Sir, with respect, you want me to pretend to be you, and you want to pretend to be a driver, so that a personal assistant your grandfather hired doesn't find out you have money. Have I understood the plan?" "Yes. And when it comes out, because it will come out, these things always come out. It will not come out. I will be careful. Sir, in my experience, I will be careful is the single most expensive sentence a man can say." Marcus rubbed his face. "May I ask why?" Tunde looked out the window for a while before he answered. "Because I want to know," he said, "who she is when she thinks there is nothing to gain. That's all. Just once in my life I want to watch someone up close who does not know what I am worth. If she is what my grandfather thinks she is, I will find out. And if she is like the others, I will find that out too, and I will have lost nothing but a little dignity." "You will have lost the trust of a woman who reads contracts twice," Marcus said. "But you are the boss. I am the boss." "For now," said Marcus, who had known him since he was 19, and got the smallest twitch of a smile in return. The interview at Solus Designs happened on a Monday. Amara had not planned to apply. Assisting Chief Bello paid the debt and then some, and she was grateful for it in a way that kept her up some nights. But the old man himself had pushed her toward it. "You went to school for this," he had said, turning over one of her sketches, the ones she still drew at night out of a habit she could not break. "Jewelry design. You have a certificate gathering dust and a gift gathering rust. Solace is hiring. Go and sit for it. If they are fools and turn you away, you still have me. But do not spend your one life driving an old man to the cardiologist when you could be making things that outlive you both." He did not tell her that the Adeyemi Group had bought Solace 6 weeks earlier. He did not tell her that the man she thought was a driver signed the checks. He simply told her to go, and she went, because she trusted him now, and because some small buried part of her had never stopped wanting it. The Solace waiting room was full. A dozen candidates, portfolios on their knees, and among them a woman Amara recognized before she had fully sat down. Kemi Balogun. They had been classmates. Kemi had come from money. Real money, the comfortable inherited kind. And she had spent their years at the Polytechnic treating Amara as a curiosity at best, and a threat at worst. There had been an incident in their final year. A design competition. Amara had entered a necklace, a piece built around 3 curved lines and a broken pattern, and she had been the clear favorite, and 2 days before judging Kemi had submitted a strikingly similar piece and accused Amara of copying her. It had come down to Amara's word against Kemi's family's connections, and connections had won. And Amara had learned a lesson she had never forgotten, that a poor person's ownership of her own ideas is the flimsiest kind of ownership there is. She had learned something else from it too, a habit. And that habit was about to save her life, though she did not know it yet. Amara Okoli. Kemi's smile was a beautiful, terrible thing. I heard you deliver food now, on a bike. Is it true? Work is work, from best in the class to carrying jollof up people's stairs. Kemi shook her head slowly, savoring it. Life is funny, isn't it? Some of us rose. Some of us fell into a delivery bag. I am here for the same job you are. You are here to embarrass yourself. This is a design house, Amara, not a canteen. She looked Amara up and down at the neat but cheap clothes, the portfolio in a folder that had been used many times. They can smell poverty here. You will not last the first question. Amara said nothing. She had learned that too. Kemi wanted a fight, because a fight was a story she could tell later edited. Silence gave her nothing to work with. The interview panel was 3 people. A woman named Mrs. Coker, senior, unsmiling. A man called Mr. Daniels, who deferred to her, and, watching from the doorway, arms folded. A driver in a dark shirt, whom the 2 panelists occasionally glanced at, as though seeking permission, and then pretended they had not. Amara did not look at him. She had learned, in 3 weeks of working for his grandfather, that Tunde, the driver, appeared in strange places and said little, and she had assumed it was because the old man kept him running errands all over the company. She had no reason to think anything else. Why would she? Kemi went in first. She came out 15 minutes later, radiant. Then it was Amara's turn. Your last employment, Mrs. Coker read from the form, was food delivery. Yes, ma. This is a jewelry and design house. Yes, ma. My training is in jewelry design. My work is in the folder in front of you. I would ask that you judge me by what is in the folder, and not by what is on my employment form. Mrs. Coker's eyebrow moved a fraction. She opened the folder. She turned pages. And then she frowned and turned back and set 2 sheets side by side, and the temperature in the room changed. These designs, she said slowly, are almost identical to a set submitted by the previous candidate. The floor opened up under Amara. Not again. Not this exact thing. Again, 10 years later in a new room. May I see? Mrs. Coker turned the folder, and there it was. Kemi's submission laid beside her own, and they were the same. The 3 curved lines, the broken pattern, the central stone. Kemi had submitted Amara's competition piece, the one from 10 years ago. The one Kemi had stolen the first time, and was now, brazenly, incredibly, stealing again in the same room, in front of Amara's own face. Ma, Amara said, and her voice was very steady. That is my design. It was my design 10 years ago at the Polytechnic, and this candidate accused me of copying her then, and won because her family knew the judges. She has submitted my work to you today as her own. I can prove it. Mrs. Coker's face said clearly that she had heard this kind of desperate accusation before and did not believe a word of it. Contingent Kemi comes highly recommended. Her uncle sits on a board we work with. And you are a delivery rider telling me that the well-connected candidate stole from you. Do you understand how that sounds? I understand exactly how it sounds. It sounded the same way 10 years ago. Amara reached into her bag, which is why, 10 years ago, I promised myself it would never happen again without proof. May I show you something on my phone? She had their attention now, if only because the audacity of a delivery girl reaching for evidence was itself interesting. She opened her email. She scrolled, and she turned the screen toward Mrs. Coker. "After the Polytechnic," she said, "I started emailing every design I ever made to myself. The moment I finished a sketch, before I showed it to a single living person, I photographed it and I mailed it to my own address. The email carries the date and time. It cannot be changed after the fact. It sits on a server that is not mine and cannot be edited by me. This one," she pointed, "this is that necklace. Photographed and emailed to myself on the 9th of March, at 11:41 at night 10 years ago. 2 full days before the competition's submission deadline, before anyone but me had ever seen it." The room was silent. "There is more," Amara said. "The concept. Ask her what it means, the design she submitted. Ask her what the 3 lines are. Ask her what the broken pattern is. She cannot tell you because she did not make it. I can tell you because I did." She swallowed. "The 3 curved lines are patience, dignity, and courage. The broken pattern is loss. And the single stone that runs unbroken through the break is inspired by a string of beads my father gave my mother before he left us. It is chipped on one side. I put the chip in the design on purpose. It is on the drawing. You can see it. A person who copied this would smooth that flaw out because they would think it was a mistake. Only the person who made it would know that the flaw is the whole point." Mrs. Coker looked at the drawing for a very long time. The chip was there, on the central stone. Deliberate and strange, and exactly as Amara had described. From the doorway, the driver in the dark shirt watched the whole thing without moving a single muscle in his face. But inside, Tunde Adeyemi was doing arithmetic of a kind he had not done in years. He was thinking, she mails her ideas to herself, time-stamped, on a server she cannot edit, because she learned at 21 that the word of a poor woman is worth nothing without a receipt. "I have a legal department of 9 people, and I am not sure they are that careful." And he was thinking, with something that was not quite comfort, "My grandfather is going to be unbearable about this." He stepped forward. He kept his voice low, pitched only for Mrs. Coker, and he leaned in the way a driver relaying a message from his boss might lean. "Why?" he murmured. "Did you not check the timestamps before you accused her?" Mrs. Coker startled. "I've the recommendation from the board. 1. A recommendation is not talent. And an uncle on a board is not proof of authorship." He straightened. "This is not my decision. But if it were, I would want to know why the connected candidate was believed and the qualified one was accused, before a single fact had been checked. I would want to know that about my own hiring process. Would you not, Ma?" Mrs. Coker would. She turned back to Amara, and her voice had changed. "Miss Okoli," she said, "your work is exceptional. The care you take to protect it is, frankly, more professional than most of my senior staff. Solace Designs would like to offer you a position, junior designer to start. We will discuss terms." Amara did not cry. She had trained that out of herself too, but her hands, folded in her lap, gripped each other hard. "Thank you, Ma." "Do not thank me. Thank your own discipline. If you had not mailed those drawings to yourself 10 years ago, I would have shown you the door today, and I would have been wrong, and I would never have known it. Remember that. In this industry, your talent will make you enemies faster than it makes you friends. Protect your work, as if it is the only thing you own, because for people like us, sometimes it is." Amara would remember it. She would remember every word. Kemi was told in the corridor that she was disqualified pending an investigation into the authorship of her submission. Her face when she heard it was not something Amara enjoyed as much as she had expected to. It was too full of hatred to enjoy. Kemi looked at her across the waiting room, and it was not the look of a woman who had lost a job. It was the look of a woman who had decided something. "You think you won," Kemi said quietly, as Amara passed. "You embarrassed me in front of a panel. Enjoy it. People like you always win the small thing right before they lose everything. I have an uncle on that board. You have a bicycle." She smiled. "We will see who is delivering food this time next year." Amara walked out into the sun. The driver in the dark shirt was leaning against the black Land Cruiser, waiting, as if he happened to be going her way. "You got it," he said. It was not a question. He had been standing in the doorway. "I got it. You did that yourself." He opened the passenger door. "The panel wanted to throw you out. Your own work stopped them. Not me, not anyone, you. You said something to the woman. I asked her a question. Your evidence answered it." He shrugged. "Get in. I will drop you. Grandfather wants you at the house by 5, and you'll never make it on that bike in this traffic." She got in. She should not have. She would think about that later. How easily she had gotten used to accepting rides from a man she barely knew. But she was tired and happy, and the seat was cool. And he was, whatever else he was, kind in a rough and sideways manner she was beginning to recognize. "Can I ask you something?" she said as they pulled into traffic. "You can ask. Why do you work for him? You are clearly clever. You speak to those company people like you are used to it. You could do 100 things better than driving an old man to his cardiologist." Tunde kept his eyes on the road for a while. "I owe him," he said finally, which was true. "He raised me. My parents died when I was young, and he took me in and made me into whatever I am. Everything I have because of him. Driving him around is the least of what I owe. It is not even a real payment. It is just the part he can see." Amara nodded slowly. "That I understand," she said. "Owing someone who did a hard thing for you when you could not do it for yourself. Owing them so much that no amount of ordinary living ever seems to touch it." She looked out the window. "My aunt is like that. She did one enormous thing for me, and she has been collecting on it ever since. And I hate her for it, and I cannot get free of it. Because the thing she did was real. The debt is real. It is the collecting that is wicked, not the debt." Tunde said nothing for a mile. "There is a difference," he said finally, "between someone who helps you and lets you carry the memory of it lightly, and someone who helps you and then straps the memory to your back and makes you carry it uphill forever. My grandfather is the first kind. Your aunt is the second." "How do you know which kind you are?" Amara asked. "To the people who owe you." He did not answer that. He could not, because the honest answer, the one he did not yet know how to say, was, "I have spent 3 years being terrified of finding out." And he was not ready to say that to a woman who thought he was a driver. Amara was good at the job, better than good. Within her first month at Solace, a client who had been dragging his feet on a commission for a set of anniversary pieces saw one of Amara's preliminary sketches, left on a table by accident, and asked who had drawn it. When he was told it was the new junior, he asked that she be put on his account. The commission was worth 11 million naira. Solace had nearly lost it. Amara's sketch saved it. Mrs. Coker, who did not hand out praise, handed out none. But she moved Amara's desk from the back row to the second row, which in the grammar of that office meant more than any words. Tunde watched all of it from a careful distance. He came by Solace 2 or 3 times a week, ostensibly running errands for Chief Bello, actually running his own company from a borrowed corner office under Marcus's name. And he found reasons to pass through the design floor. He told himself it was diligence. He was, after all, the owner. It was reasonable for an owner to observe. It was not diligence. He knew it was not. He had begun to look forward to the passing through. He watched her work. She was fast, and she was exacting. And she was kind to the cleaners in a way that cost her nothing and that most of the designers did not bother with. He watched her turn down a lunch invitation from a senior designer because she had brought her own food in a container to save money, even though she now made enough not to have to. Old habits. He watched her, on the day her first real salary cleared, not buy herself anything, but instead spend the afternoon on her phone arranging a donation to an orphanage in Mushin where, it emerged, she had volunteered as a teenager. That last one he asked her about, casually in the car. You gave your first salary away. Most of it. Why? You have a debt, you told me. You have earned nothing your whole life. The debt is paid. Your grandfather's advance covered it. She looked at him like the question was strange. And this money did not come from my sweat, not really. It came from a rich old man deciding to be kind to me at a bread stall. Money that falls on you like that you did not break your back for, it feels wrong to keep all of it. So I sent most of it to the children at the home. They break their backs and get nothing. Let some of the luck land on them for once. That is not how money works. It is how my money works. She shrugged. I am young. I can earn more. They cannot. Tunde drove in silence. He was thinking about the last woman he had loved 3 years ago and the way she had spent his money, and the particular sound of her laugh when a shopgirl told her the price of something, and the price was no object. He was thinking that he had never, not once, met a person who received unexpected money and immediately looked around for who needed it more. He had assumed such people were a fiction invented by pastors to shame the rest of them. He was. He realized with a sensation like missing a step in the dark, in trouble. The trouble had a name, and it was not the trouble he expected. Aunt Ronki had not stopped thinking about the 2.3 million naira that had appeared in her account inside a week. It ate at her. Delivery girls did not simply produce 2.3 million. Either Amara had done something shameful, which Ronki would have relished, a scandal she could hold over the girl's head forever, or Amara had fallen into money, real money, and that was worse, because money that Amara had was money Ronki did not have. And Ronki had built her entire life on the principle that whatever her dead sister's family possessed was rightfully hers to manage. So she made calls. She was good at calls. She had spent 30 years learning who owed whom what, in which family, and how to trade a piece of gossip for a piece of information. It took her 9 days. At the end of the 9 days, she knew 3 things. She knew that Amara had a job assisting an old man named Chief Bello Adeyemi. She knew that the Adeyemi group had recently purchased Solace Designs, where Amara now also worked, which struck her as too tidy to be coincidence. And she knew. This was the piece that made her sit down slowly at her kitchen table and stare at the wall that the man Amara referred to. When she mentioned him at all as the driver, Tunde was not a driver. There was only one Tunde in the Adeyemi family. Tunde Adeyemi, 31. Chief Executive, sole heir. One of the wealthiest young men in the country. A man whose face was deliberately kept out of the papers. A man worth, by the most conservative estimate Ronke could find, north of 40 billion naira. Her niece, her delivery girl niece, whose mother had scrubbed floors, was living in the house of, and being courted in disguise by, the heir to the Adeyemi fortune. Ronke did not feel happy for her. It did not occur to her to feel happy for her. What she felt was robbed. as though something enormous had been handed to the wrong person, and the wrong person was too stupid to even know she was holding it. And then Ronke learned one more name, the name that turned envy into a plan. Zainab. Zainab Salako had been engaged to Tunde Ademi 3 years earlier. The engagement had ended in a manner that the Lagos social world still whispered about. What Ronke learned from a woman who had been a bridesmaid was this. 3 years ago, the Ademi group had gone through a crisis. Tunde's father had died suddenly. The company had nearly collapsed under a wave of debt and betrayal by trusted partners. And for about 8 months it had genuinely looked as though the Ademis would lose everything. And in month 3 of those 8 months, Zainab Salako had returned her ring, given an interview to a magazine about irreconcilable differences, and married the heir to a cement fortune within the year. When the Ademi group recovered, when it more than recovered, when Tunde rebuilt it into something larger than his father had ever managed. Zainab's cement heir turned out to be a violent man with a gambling problem, and the marriage had quietly ended, and Zainab was now, at 33, single, expensive, and available. Ronke put the pieces together on her kitchen table. Amara did not know Tunde was rich. Zainab wanted Tunde back, and if the right information reached the right woman at the right time, then Zainab would do the work of removing Amara, and Ronke would simply be the helpful relative who had passed along a useful fact. And when the dust settled and Amara came crawling home with nothing, Ronke would be there, generous as ever, ready to lend her niece money at a reasonable rate of interest. That night, Ronke sent Zainab Salako a message through the bridesmaid, along with everything she had gathered: a photograph, an address, a name, a situation. She lit the fuse and sat back to watch it burn toward the girl she had spent a decade feeding on. Kemi was burning too, on her own separate fuse, and the two fires were about to meet. The investigation into her stolen submission had not gone away. Solace had a new owner now, and the new owner's people took authorship seriously in a way the old management never had. There were policies, every submission logged, dated, filed. Kemi's uncle on the board, a man named Chief Okoro, had made 2 calls to make the investigation disappear, and both calls had failed, which told him something had changed at Solace that his usual methods could not reach. He and Kemi met in his office. She wanted the girl destroyed. He wanted the investigation buried. They discovered, over the course of an ugly conversation, that these were the same want. "They keep records now," Chief Okoro said. "Timestamps. The girl mails her own work to herself. You cannot simply claim her design. Those days are gone. The new owner has a legal team that treats a sketch like a land title." "Then we do not claim her design," Kemi said. "We make her a thief of ours." And she laid it out. It was clever, in the way that cruel things are sometimes clever. If Kemi could not steal Amara's work, then Kemi would plant a design of her own properly logged, properly dated, in the new system, and then arrange for a strikingly similar design to appear under Amara's name, dated later. The system that protected Amara would then, mechanically, indict her. The timestamp that had saved her would damn her. And the beauty of it, Kemi said, her eyes bright, was that Amara's own reputation for meticulous record-keeping would make the frame airtight. Nobody would believe that a woman that careful had accidentally submitted a copy. They would assume she had done it on purpose, brazenly, and been caught. "And the board?" Kemi asked her uncle. "Leave the board to me. If it goes to a disciplinary panel, I will make sure the right people are on it." Chief Okoro's mouth thinned. "It will cost. These things always cost." There is a man on the panel who can be reached. Around 4 million should reach him. Pay it, Kemi said. I will pay it. I want her gone. I want her not just fired, but disgraced. I want it in the industry papers. I want it so that no design house in this country will take her CV without laughing. Chief Okoro looked at his niece for a moment, and even he, who had spent his life in rooms where cruelty was currency, felt something cold pass over him. You hate her, he said. This much. Over a school competition 10 years ago. She looks at me, Kemi said, like she is not afraid of me, like she never was. Do you understand? A girl who has nothing, who has to be afraid of everything, and she looks at me like I am nothing. I have spent 10 years wanting to see her afraid. I am going to see it. They paid the 4 million naira in cash over 2 weeks to a member of the Solace Disciplinary Board named Mr. Odd. They planted the design. They arranged the copy. And they waited for the machinery of Amara's own carefulness to close around her throat. Before the fires reached her, Amara had a few good weeks. It is worth telling them, because a person deserves to be shown happy before you show them hunted. Chief Bello had grown attached to her in a way that embarrassed him and delighted her. He argued with her about his salt intake and lost. He made her sit and eat with him rather than eat alone, an arrangement no previous assistant had been granted. And he told her long stories about her country's histories that she half suspected he embellished, and he asked her opinion on things and, more surprising, listened to it. Once she caught him showing a photograph of her sketch. The 11 million naira commission, to a visiting friend, saying, "My girl designed this," with a pride so naked and so unearned that she had to leave the room. Tunde was there more and more. He fixed the wiring in her small flat one evening, after the circuit breaker tripped for the 3rd time in a week, and when the lights went out and she jumped, he laughed at her, and she threw a cushion at his head in the dark, and something happened in that dark room that neither of them named. He started bringing her lunch to Solace, badly disguised as errands. She started making extra food and packing it for the driver, badly disguised as thrift. Neither of them was fooling anyone, least of all Chief Bello, who watched the two of them orbit each other and said nothing, and smiled into his forbidden salt. One evening, after a Solace event ran late, Tunde drove her home the long way, along the water, and neither of them mentioned that it was the long way. "Can I tell you something?" Amara said, watching the lights on the lagoon. "And you will not laugh. I make no promises. I trust you. That is the thing I wanted to say. I have not trusted a man since my father, and my father taught me not to, and I trust you, and it frightens me." She kept her eyes on the water. "My father lied to my mother for years. Small lies that grew. A woman here, a debt there, a story to cover the last story. By the time it all came out, the lies were bigger than the man. And my mother could not tell where he ended and they began. So she let him go. And she raised me on one rule above all the others. She said, 'Amara, a person can hurt you 100 ways, and you can forgive most of them. But if they lie to you, if they build the whole house on a lie and let you live in it, then when it falls, it does not just break your heart. It breaks your ability to believe your own eyes. And that,' she said, 'is the one thing you never let a person do to you twice.'" Tunde's hands were very still on the wheel. "So," Amara said, "that is my one rule. Lie to me about anything real, Tunde, and I am gone. Not angry, just gone. Because I cannot afford, I truly cannot afford, to lose my faith in my own eyes again." She smiled at him, to soften it, not knowing what she had done. Tunde said, "I understand." And he drove her home, And he did not sleep that night because the man who had just heard her one rule was, at that very moment, breaking it. Had been breaking it for weeks. Was going to keep breaking it because he did not yet know how to stop without losing her. And every day he did not stop made the stopping worse. He almost told her a dozen times. The words would come up into his throat, and he would look at her face and think, "Not yet. Not tonight. Let's have tonight." And swallow them back down. He did not understand that this is precisely how his father-in-law's lies had grown. One good night at a time. A story to protect the last story. He, who had built his identity on being nothing like the men who lie, was becoming one, gently, out of what he told himself was love. That is the thing about the lie you tell for someone's own good. It is still a lie, and it still teaches the person who told it that their judgment is worth more than the other person's right to the truth. Tunde would learn this. It would cost him more than money, which for him was saying something. Zainab Salasko came to Solace on a Wednesday. She did not have an appointment. She did not need one. She swept into the design floor in a way that made two junior staff stand up without knowing why, and she looked around the room until she found what she was looking for, and she walked to Amara's desk and stood over it. "You are the delivery girl." Amara looked up. "I am sorry, the one living in the Ademi house, playing house with Tunde." Zainab's smile was cosmetic. "I wanted to see you. I heard you were pretty, in a rough way, and you are, in a rough way. I can see the appeal. It is the appeal of a warm meal after a long fast. It does not last past the meal. I do not know who you are. No, you do not. That is the whole delicious point." Zainab leaned down. "He has not told you anything, has he? You do not even know what you are standing in the middle of. You poor blind thing. You think you found a kind driver." She laughed, low and genuinely amused. "Ask him. Ask your driver who he really is. Ask him about me. My name is Zainab. I was going to marry him. And I am going to have a very interesting week." She straightened, and she left a hole in the air where she had been. Amara sat very still for a long time. That evening she did not make extra food. When Tunde came to drive her home, she got into the car in silence, and he knew immediately that something was wrong, and he asked, and she waited until they were parked outside her flat before she answered. "A woman came to my desk today," she said. "Beautiful. Rich. Rude in the way only rich people can afford to be. She said her name was Zainab. She said she was going to marry you. She told me to ask you who you really are." Amara turned in her seat and looked at him, and her eyes were steady and terrible. "So I am asking, who is Zainab, Tunde?" And here it was. The moment. The one he had been swallowing for weeks. He could have told her everything right there, in the dark of the car, and it would have been bad, but it would have been survivable, because it would have been the truth offered freely. He told her half. "Zainab is someone I was engaged to a long time ago," he said. And every word of it was true, and that was what made it a lie, because he stopped there. Our families arranged it. It ended badly. She left when things got hard, and she has spent the years since regretting it, and now she wants back what she threw away. That is all she is. Do not let her into your head. She said to ask you who you really are. She talks in riddles to sound important. It is her whole personality. He reached for her hand. "I am the man who fixes your wiring and eats your food and drives you home the long way. That is who I really am. Do not let a bitter woman rewrite that." Amara looked at him for a long moment, and she wanted to believe him. So she did mostly, which is the most dangerous kind of believing there is. "Do not hide things from me," she said quietly. "That is all I asked. My one rule. "I would never," said the man who was. The frame closed on a Thursday morning, 3 weeks before the Adeyemi Gala. Amara arrived at Solus to find Mrs. Coker waiting at her desk with 2 members of the disciplinary board and a security officer. On the desk lay 2 design sheets. One was a piece logged into the Solus system 6 weeks earlier under Kemi Balogun's name. Kemi had been reinstated as a contract consultant while her investigation dragged, on the strength of her uncle's board seat. The other was a design logged 3 days ago under Amara's name for the very commission that had made her reputation. They were nearly identical. "Miss Okoli," said the board member, a soft-spoken man named Mr. Ad. "Can you explain why your submission so closely resembles a design registered in our system weeks before yours?" Amara looked at the 2 sheets. The floor did its old trick of falling away. "I have never seen that other design in my life," she said. "I did not copy anything. My work is my own. I can prove that is the difficulty." Mr. Ade's voice was gentle, and that was the cruelest part. "You are, by every account, the most careful record keeper in this building. You mail your own drawings to yourself. You date everything. You lecture the juniors about it. And yet here is a design under your name. In our system, dated after an almost identical one under another designer's name. Given your reputation, we cannot treat this as an accident. A careless designer might copy by mistake. A careful one does not. Which leaves only one explanation. That is not. You are suspended. Effective immediately, pending a full disciplinary hearing," Mrs. Coker said, and her face was closed, in a way that hurt worse than shouting. "Hand in your access card. Do not remove any files. Anything you take will be treated as theft of company property." "Mrs. Coker." Amara's voice cracked for the first time in the whole story. You told me. You told me on the day you hired me. Protect your work as if it is the only thing you own." "I did. I have done nothing but. Please. Please look at timestamps properly. Look at where the design came from. Ask who logged that other sheet and when." "The hearing will look at everything," Mrs. Coker said. But she would not meet Amara's eyes, and that told Amara that the hearing had already decided. The security officer walked her out, in front of the whole design floor, past the desk that had been moved from the back row to the second row. Kemi was there, at the edge of the room, and she was not smiling, because a smile would have been a mistake. But her eyes were doing the thing she had waited 10 years to do. They were watching Amara be afraid. By that afternoon, the story was in an industry gossip channel. Delivery rider designer at prestigious Solus, exposed as a copyist. By evening, it had a headline. By the next morning, it was in a real paper, small, on an inside page, but real, with Amara's name spelled correctly, and her old job named twice, from food delivery to design theft. The connected candidate had done exactly what she promised in the corridor. "We will see who is delivering food this time next year." Amara did not go to Chief Bellow's house. She could not face the old man's disappointment, or worse, his belief in her, which she felt she had somehow failed. She turned off her phone. She sat in her small flat with her mother's box open on the plastic table, holding the string of blue and white beads. And for the first time in years she let herself cry, fully, ugly, the way she had not cried since the funeral. Not because she had been accused. She had been accused before. She cried because she had believed, stupidly, for a few weeks, that carefulness was armor. That if you documented everything and stole nothing and worked twice as hard, the truth would hold. And the truth had not held. The very habit that was supposed to protect her had been turned into the murder weapon. There was a knock at the door. She did not answer it. It came again. Then Tunde's voice, low, through the wood. Amara, I know you are in there. I am not leaving. I will sit in this corridor all night if I have to, and your neighbors will talk, and it will embarrass us both. So please open the door. She opened it. She looked terrible and she did not care. You saw the papers, she said. I saw the papers. And you came anyway to the copyist. The delivery girl who steals. She laughed, and it was not a good laugh. You should go, Tunde, whatever this is between us. You cannot afford to be attached to this now. Your employers, your grandfather's business, everyone will climb. Stop. He came in and shut the door. I did not read those papers and believe them. I read them and knew, immediately, with total certainty, that they were false. Do you understand? Not hoped. Knew. Because I watched you keep records like a woman guarding a grave, and I know you did not do this. And I know exactly the kind of person who did. His jaw was tight. Someone framed you. Someone who knew that your carefulness was your shield, and figured out how to turn it into a knife. That takes planning. That takes money. That takes access to the Solace system. I want you to tell me everything about the woman from the Polytechnic. Kemi. Everything. Amara stared at him. Why would you are a driver, Tunde? What can you possibly do about a design house disciplinary board and a bought newspaper? And there it was again. The moment. The third or fourth time now that the truth had come up into his throat with the perfect opening beneath it. Tell her now. Tell her, I am not a driver. I own Solace. I can burn this frame down with one phone call, and I will. And then I will tell you everything. All of it. The whole stupid disguise. And I will beg your forgiveness. The opening was perfect. It would never be more perfect. He looked at her tear-swollen face, and he thought, not while she is this fragile. I will fix it first. I will clear her name. And then, when she is safe, I will tell her, and the good news will cushion the bad. He told himself this was mercy. It was the oldest lie in the story of his own father-in-law, dressed in new clothes, and he could not see it, because we can never see it, that particular lie, from the inside. I know people, he said. Grandfather knows people. Let me make some calls. Just tell me everything about Kemi first. She told him everything. The Polytechnic. The stolen design 10 years ago. The corridor threat. The uncle on the board. And Tunde listened, and inside him the cold, careful executive that had rebuilt a 40 billion naira company from ruins woke up all the way, and began, methodically, to plan the end of Kemi Balagon. Here is what Tunde did. In the 3 weeks before the gala, while Amara believed a driver was making hopeful phone calls on her behalf. He did not go to the disciplinary board. He went around it. He instructed his actual Ziegel team, 9 people, who reported to the chief executive of the Adeyemi Group and had no idea their boss had been posing as a driver, to conduct a forensic audit of the Solace design logging system, not the surface records, the metadata. The server logs beneath the records, the ones that showed not just what a file claimed about itself, but what had actually happened to it, and when. It took the audit 11 days to find what Amara's habit had made findable. The design logged under Kemi's name 6 weeks earlier had a problem. Its metadata, the invisible information embedded in the file itself, the digital equivalent of the chip Amara had put in her stone on purpose, did not match its claim. The file said it was created 6 weeks ago. But it had been created, in fact, 4 days before it was logged, on a machine registered to a Solace consulting account, and it had been modified to reference design elements that only appeared in Amara's commission work Kemi could only have seen after Amara produced it. In plain terms, Kemi's earlier design had been made later and backdated, using Amara's real design as its source. The copy was pretending to be the original. The timestamp had been forged, and forged clumsily, because the people who forged it did not understand that a file remembers more than the date you tell it to remember. There was more, and it was worse. And it was the part that turned a design dispute into a rhyme. The forensic audit of the system access showed that the backdated file had been logged by a board member's credentials, Mr. Abai, and a parallel financial trace once. The Adeyemi Group's compliance arm was very good at this, having survived the kind of corporate betrayal that teaches a company to be good at it. Found 4 million naira moving in cash equivalent instruments over 2 weeks, from an account connected to Chief Okoro to an account connected to Mr. Abai. The exact amount, in the exact window, bracketing the exact planting of the file. Tunde had in his hands an airtight case, forged timestamps, a bought board member, a financial trail. A design house he happened to own, being used to destroy an innocent woman by a well-connected family who had no idea the woman had, sitting quietly in her corner, the single most powerful man in the building. He could have released it quietly. A clean legal letter, a quiet reversal, a settlement. Amara reinstated, Kemi disciplined, no fuss. He did not do that. And this is the one place where Tunde, for all his flaws, understood something true. He understood that Amara had been humiliated in public, walked out past her own desk, named in the papers, made afraid where everyone could see, and that a quiet private fix would clear her record, but not her name. The whispers would follow her. The industry would say she got off because someone powerful liked her. The delivery girl who steals would simply become the delivery girl who steals but has protection. No. The lie had been public. The truth would be public. He would do it at the Adeyemi Gala, in front of 200 of the most important people in the industry, where the whispers had started. And he would do it in a way that no whisper could ever survive. He just made one mistake in the planning. A mistake so obvious that Marcus pointed it out and Tunde overrode him. He planned to reveal the frame and clear Amara's name at the gala, and to reveal, in the same breath and the same room, that the driver she trusted was in fact the owner of everything. "Sir," Marcus said, "you are going to clear her name and confess your lie in the same 5 minutes. In public. In front of 200 people. She told you her one rule. You told me she told you. You are about to break it on a stage. I am about to save her on a stage. You are about to do both, and she is only going to hear one of them clearly, and it will not be the one you want." Marcus rubbed his face. "Tell her before, tonight, alone. Let her be angry in private. Then clear her name at the gala as her partner, not as the stranger who fooled her. For God's sake, sir, you have 3 weeks. Use one of them to be honest." "After," Tunde said. "I will tell her after, when she is safe. The good news will soften it." "The good news," said Marcus, who had watched him make one bad decision in 3 years, and was now watching the second, "is going to be delivered by a man she just found out is a liar. Nothing you say after that will be soft." Tunde did not listen. He was the boss, and he had rebuilt an empire on his own judgment. And his own judgment had never yet failed him on anything that could be counted in money. He did not understand that the thing he was handling now could not be counted in money, and that his judgment about it was worth exactly nothing, and that the one man in his life who loved him enough to tell him so was, at that moment, being ignored. The Adeyemi Gala was held in the ballroom of a hotel, the Adeyemi Group happened to own, though most of the guests did not connect the name on the invitation with the name on the building's deed. 200 people. The design industry. The finance people who funded it, the press who covered it. Chandeliers. A string quartet. Waiters moving through the crowd with trays. Amara did not want to come. Tunde had insisted. He had told her only that his grandfather wanted her there. That Chief Bello had pulled strings to get her an invitations despite the scandal, and that, showing her face, unafraid, in the very industry that had condemned her, was the first step to taking her name back. He had not told her the rest. He had let her think she was attending as the old man's assistant, to hold her head up, and nothing more. She wore a simple dark dress. She carried in a folder copies of her own time-stamped emails, because even now, even suspended and disgraced, she would not walk into a room full of that industry without her evidence, her armor, her chipped stone, old habits. The habit that had been turned against her and that she still stubbornly kept. She had been in the room 11 minutes when Kemi found her. Kemi was radiant tonight, in the way of someone who has won. She came across the floor with Zainab Salako beside her. The two of them had found each other, envy recognizing envy, and behind them, at a careful distance, hovered Chief Okoro, and at the very back, unbelievably, Aunt Ronk, in borrowed finery, come to watch the burning she had helped light. "You have some nerve," Kemi said, loud enough for the nearest cluster of guests to turn, a copyist. At an industry gala. "Did you deliver food to get in, or did you steal an invitation the way you steal everything else?" "I was invited," Amara said quietly. "By whom? On what merit?" Kemi's voice rose, practiced pitched to carry. "Everyone here knows what you did. It was in the papers. From a bicycle to a design house to a disgrace, and you dare to show your face. Get your filthy delivery hands off that stage," Kemi said, though Amara was nowhere near a stage, because Kemi was not really speaking to Amara. She was performing for the room. "You? A designer? You carry rice in a bag for a living. Poor girls own nothing but their debts." And she flicked her wine, the arc of it, that slow, deliberate arc read across the folder. Amara held against her chest, is where our story began. You remember it now, 200 guests, going dead silent. Not one fork moving. A woman near the front smiling behind her glass. Amara kneeling, gathering the soaked pages with steady bare hands, wiping the wine from a photograph of her mother's design with her own sleeve, shedding no tears, and the silent man by the door. He had been there the whole evening in a dark shirt, and the waiters had offered him nothing because they had taken him for staff, and Zainab had glanced at him twice and dismissed him as a driver, and Kemi had not looked at him at all. He was beneath looking at. He was furniture. He crossed the room now, not fast. He had learned long ago that the slowest man in a room is often the most powerful, because only the powerful can afford not to hurry. The crowd parted for him without knowing why, the way crowds do around a certain kind of stillness, and he walked to where Amara knelt on the floor of the ballroom, and he crouched down beside her in his driver's clothes, and he helped her gather the last of the wet pages. "Get up," he said gently, to her, only to her. "You do not kneel on any floor in any building that I will ever set foot in again. Get up." She looked at him, confused. "Tund, what are you?" "Get up," he said again, and he took her elbow and lifted her, and he turned to face the room, and his voice, when it came, was not the voice of a driver. It filled the ballroom without shouting. It was the voice of a man reading a verdict. "My name," he said, "is Tunde Adeyemi. I am the chief executive of the Adeyemi Group. I own the company that owns Solace Designs. I own the company that owns this hotel. And for the last 4 months, I have been living in my grandfather's house, pretending to be his driver. Because 3 years ago, the woman standing over there returned my ring the week my father died, and the week my company nearly failed. And I decided I would never again let anyone near me who could smell my money before they saw my face. The silence in the room changed its character entirely. You could feel 200 people resorting everything they thought they knew. Zainab's face had gone the color of paper. Kemi's wine glass, empty now, was still tilted in her hand, forgotten. Chief Okoro had begun very quietly to move toward the exit. "Stay where you are, Chief Okoro," Tunde said. Without looking at him, and the older man stopped, as if he had hit a wall. "You will want to hear this. It concerns you." He turned back to the room. He did not raise his voice. "3 weeks ago," he said, "a designer at my company was accused of copying another designer's work. She was suspended. She was walked out past her own desk in front of her colleagues. Her name was put in the papers. She was called a thief, a copyist, a delivery girl who steals. And the whole industry, this industry, the people in this room, decided that was probably true because she was poor. And the woman who accused her was connected. He let that sit. So I had it audited. Not the surface records, the metadata. The truth underneath the records, which is harder to forge, because a file remembers more than a liar tells it to." He nodded, and Marcus, standing at the edge of the room in a suit that fit far too well for a security officer's, stepped forward and handed a folder to Mrs. Coker, who had gone very pale. "Mrs. Coker, you will find in there the forensic report. I will summarize it for the room, because the room started this, and the room can finish it. The design that Kemi Balogun logged 6 weeks ago, the one used to accuse Amara Okoli of copying, was not created 6 weeks ago. It was created 4 days before it was logged, on a Solus consulting machine, and backdated. Its metadata references design elements that appear only in Amara's later commission work, meaning the so-called original was built from the so-called copy. The copy was pretending to be the original. Anyone in this room who has ever designed anything understands exactly what that means." A murmur now rising. "It gets worse." Tunde's voice hardened. "The backdated file was logged into our system, using the credentials of a member of our disciplinary board, Mr. Ad. And our compliance arm traced 4 million naira in cash-equivalent instruments, moving over 2 weeks from an account connected to Chief Okoro to an account connected to Mr. Adi. 4 million naira, the exact amount, in the exact window. To bury a real investigation into Kemi Balogun and manufacture a false one against Amara Okoli." He turned finally to Kemi, and for the first time all evening his voice had contempt in it. "You could not steal her work, because she guards it like a grave. So you decided to steal her name instead. You turned her own carefulness into the weapon against her. It was clever, I will give you that. It was genuinely clever, and it was the most cowardly thing I have witnessed in 15 years of business, and it is over." "You cannot prove," Chief Okoro started. "I have proven it. It is in the folder in Mrs. Coker's hands, and a copy is with my legal team, and another copy has already been filed. Kemi Balogun, your consulting contract with Solus is terminated, and you will be the subject of a criminal referral for fraud and criminal defamation. Mr. Ad is dismissed and referred for bribery. Chief Okoro, your board seat is gone, and given that you paid the bribe, you will be joining Mr. Ad in front of a very unsympathetic set of people who take corporate fraud seriously. And your family's connections, the ones you have all spent your lives leaning on. Let me be very clear, will not reach into my company again." He looked around the room, at all of them, the industry that had condemned a poor woman on a whisper. Amara Okoli is reinstated at Solus Designs, effective tonight, with a full public correction to be sent to every publication that carried the accusation. Her designs are her own. They have always been her own. The proof was available to anyone in this room willing to look for it. None of you looked. You saw a poor woman accused by a rich one, and you did the easy arithmetic, and you got it wrong, every single one of you. And I hope it costs you a night's sleep. It should have been the greatest moment of Amara's life. Her name cleared, in public, in front of the exact people who had condemned her, her tormentor destroyed. The frame reversed, the liar exposed, the truth holding after all. Every viewer's hunger for justice satisfied. The delivery girl vindicated in a ballroom, full of the people who had looked down on her mother's kind for 100 years, and for about 10 seconds, standing there with wine drying on her folder, it was. Then the 10 seconds ended, and the other thing arrived. Because in clearing her name, Tunde had said, in front of 200 people, that he was not a driver, that he was the chief executive of the Adeyemi Group, that he had spent 4 months living beside her, eating the food she packed, letting her worry about whether he could pay his rent, letting her offer him her salary card once because she thought he was poorer than she was. She had actually done that. She remembered now with a lurch of horror she had tried to give a billionaire her salary card. And that the whole time, every single day, he had known exactly what he was and had let her believe a lie. She had told him her one rule. In the car, by the water, she had opened the box of her father's betrayal and shown him the exact shape of the wound, and she had said, in words, "This is the one thing you never let a person do to you twice." And he had said, "I understand." And he had said, "I would never." And it had already been a lie when he said it, and it had gone on being a lie for weeks after. He had not lied to hurt her. She understood that even in the first raw seconds. He had lied to test her, and then to protect her, and both of those were, in their way, almost tender. But that was not the point. Her mother's rule had never been about the reason for the lie. Her mother's rule was about what the lie does, regardless of the reason. It teaches you that you cannot trust your own eyes. And Amara had just learned, standing in a ballroom, in her wine-stained dress, that for 4 months her eyes had shown her a kind driver. And the driver had never existed. And the man she had let herself trust had been watching her the whole time, from behind a face he had put on for exactly that purpose. Tunde turned to her, and his face was open in a way she had never seen it, full of the expectation of gratitude, and he reached for her hand. "Amara," he said, "it is over. You are safe." "Tunde, you lied to me," she said it quietly. The room, which had been buzzing, went still again, because there is nothing a crowd loves like a second act. "You lied to me," she said again, "every day, for 4 months. I was going to tell you. Tonight, after, I was going to one. After." She laughed, and it was the bad laugh, the one from the flat. "You were going to save me first and then confess, so the good news would soften it. So I would be so grateful I would forgive the lie. You planned that. You planned the order of it." She saw from his face that she was exactly right, and it made it worse. "Tund, I told you the one thing. By the water. I told you what my father did, and I told you it was the one thing I could not survive twice. And you looked at me and you said you understood, and it was already a lie when you said it. Amara, I did it to protect. Do not." Her voice cracked, and she let it. Do not tell me it was to protect me. That is what they all say. That is exactly what my father said. Every lie he ever told my mother was to protect her from the last lie. You did not lie to protect me. You lied because you decided that your reasons were more important than my right to know the truth about my own life. You decided that for me. For 4 months, you decided every single day that I did not get to know what was real. And you dressed it up as love, the way they always do. The room was utterly silent now. Even Kemi, destroyed, had stopped to watch this. You cleared my name, Amara said. Thank you. I mean that. What you did tonight it was more than anyone has ever done for me, and I will be grateful for it for the rest of my life. But you cannot clear my name with one hand and take my trust with the other, and expect me to feel whole. You gave me back my reputation, and you took something I cannot get back, and I do not think you even understand which one mattered more to me. That is the part that breaks my heart. You still think the reputation was the big thing. She stepped back from his outstretched hand. It was never the reputation, Tunde. It was that I believed you, and now I never can again. She walked out. Not fast. She had learned that from him, apparently, in 4 months. She walked out slowly, with her wine-stained folder held against her chest. Through 200 of the most important people in her industry, and none of them said a word. And she did not look back, and Tunde Adeyemi, who had just brought an entire dynasty to its knees for her sake, stood alone in the center of his own ballroom, and understood, far too late, that Marcus had been right about everything. The karma landed the way real karma does. Not in a lightning strike. In paperwork. Kemi Balogun was charged. Not with the dramatic crime the room might have imagined, but with the unglamorous, grinding reality of fraud and criminal defamation. And it took months, and it was tedious, and it followed her through every one of those months like a bad smell. No design house would touch her. The uncle who had been her shield was himself charged with bribery, and a man facing his own charges makes a poor shield. Her family's name, which had opened every door of her life, became the reason doors closed. She learned, slowly and expensively, the exact lesson she had wanted to teach Amara: that a person can look untouchable right up until the moment the truth catches up, and that the fall is longest for those who climbed on other people's backs. Chief Okoro lost his board seats, all of them, because scandal spreads, and spent fortune on lawyers to stay out of prison. And succeeded mostly, which is the way of men like Chief Okoro. But he was finished in the rooms that had mattered to him, and for a man whose entire self was built from being in those rooms, that was its own kind of sentence. Mr. Aide, who had sold his integrity for 4 million naira, lost his career, his professional license, and his marriage, and got to keep the 4 million, which turned out to be the worst part, because it was not nearly enough to be worth what it cost him, and he would look at it for the rest of his life and know that. Zainab Salako was not charged with anything, because wanting a man back is not a crime, and passing along's gossip is not a crime. But she had stood in that ballroom and been publicly named as the woman who returned a ring the week a man's father died. And Lagos does not forget a thing like that, and the doors of the society she lived for grew heavier for her afterward and slower to open. And that was punishment enough for a woman whose whole life was the opening of doors. And Aunt Ronke. Aunt Ronke had lit the first fuse, and she got in the end the smallest and most fitting punishment of all: nothing. Amara simply never spoke to her again. No confrontation, no speech, no satisfying scene. Amara had paid her debt, taken her mother's box, and now she closed the door, quietly and completely, and left Ronki to sit in her house with her interest rates and her grievances, and no one left to charge them to. Some people are punished best by being allowed to become exactly what they always were, alone. Tundi did not chase Amara. That was the one thing he got right in the aftermath, and it cost him more than the 40 billion naira would have. He wanted to. He wanted to send cars and flowers and to appear at her flat and refuse to leave, the way he had before. But he understood finally, sitting in his enormous empty house, what she had asked to him. She had not said go away forever. She had said, I cannot trust my own eyes around you. And you do not fix that by overwhelming a person. You do not fix a broken trust by being large. You fix it, if it can be fixed at all, by being consistently, boringly, unglamorously honest. Over a long time, with nothing asked in return, until the person's eyes slowly relearn that what they see is real. So he did the hardest thing a man like him could do. He waited. And he told the truth, in small ways, whenever their paths crossed at Solace, where she had returned to work. He did not perform his sorrow. He simply stopped lying, about everything, all the time, to everyone, and let her watch him do it. It was his grandfather who finally spoke to her. Chief Bello came to Solace one afternoon, unannounced, and sat down across from Amara's desk. The desk in the second row, restored, and folded his old hands. I am not here to plead his case, the old man said. He made his bed. Let him lie in it a while. It will do him good. He has had too soft a life. I am here to tell you one thing you do not know, and then I will leave you in peace. Papa, let me say it. He looked at her. 3 years ago, when this family nearly died, when his father died and the company was collapsing, and the wolves were at every door, the woman he was going to marry gave back her ring and sold her story to a magazine. And people he had trusted his whole life, business partners, friends, they turned on him, all at once, because they smelled the money leaving. He was 28. He watched every person who claimed to love him recalculate the moment the numbers changed, and it did something to him. It taught him a lie of his own, the way your father taught you yours. His lie was, no one will ever love me and not my money, so I must always test them, always hide, always keeps hand on the truth so I can watch their faces when I reveal it. Amara said nothing. What he did to you was wrong, Chief Bello said. I will not soften it. He lied. And you told him not to, and he did it anyway. And he hurt you in the exact place you were already hurt. That is real, and you are right to be angry. And if you never forgive him, I will understand, and I will still love you like my own. The old man leaned forward. But I want you to understand that he did not lie because he thought you were worthless. He lied because 3 years ago he learned that he himself was worthless without his money. In the eyes of everyone he trusted, and he has never once, until you, met a person who proved that lesson wrong. You proved it wrong every single day for 4 months, and he was too frightened and too damaged to simply say thank you and take off the mask. That is not an excuse. It is only an explanation. You may do with it what you like. He stood up slowly, the way old men do. I will tell you one more thing, and then I am truly finished. On the morning you bought me that bread, I was not testing anyone. I was genuinely hungry and genuinely shoved and genuinely alone, and 40 people walked past me, and you stopped. Everything after that, the job, the schemes, the disguise, all of it, that was us, the rich and the foolish, complicating a thing that was, at its root, very simple. A hungry old man. A poor girl with 300 naira. And she stopped. He patted her hand. Do not let all our complications make you forget how simple you are at the root. It is the best thing about you. It is the thing your mother left in you, and it is worth more than everything my grandson owns." He left. Amara sat at her desk for a long time. She did not forgive him quickly, and she did not forgive him because of the speech. And she did not forgive him because he was rich, which she made him understand very clearly took her a while. She forgave him over months, and she forgave him for one reason only: because he had stopped. The lying had stopped completely, and stayed stopped, and she watched it. Stay stopped through situations where a lie would have been easier, and he told the truth anyway. Small, ugly, inconvenient truths. Until one day, she noticed that her eyes had quietly relearned how to believe what they saw around him. And she had not even decided to let them. It had just happened the way healing does, when you are not staring at it. And she made changes, because she was Amara, and because she had learned in the hardest possible way what happens to poor people whose work is not protected. She went to Tunde as a colleague first, long before she went to him as anything else. And she told him what Solace was going to do, and it was not a request. Every design submission, from the most junior sketch to the senior commissions, would be logged with forensic metadata that could not be backdated, on a system audited by an independent third party, so that no connected family could ever again turn a poor designer's own carefulness into a weapon. No employee could be suspended on an accusation without the metadata being examined. First the truth underneath, before the whisper on top, and no one could be mocked at Solace for the job they had held before, or the bike they had ridden, or the neighborhood they had come from, on pain of dismissal, because Amara had stood on the receiving end of that, and she would not preside over a house that dealt it out. She built one more thing, a mentorship program for young designers who had the gift, and none of the connections, the ones with talent and no uncle on any board. She ran it herself. Tunde funded it and, at her insistence, kept his name off it, because she had had quite enough of powerful men attaching their names to her work. The first cohort was 12 young people from neighborhoods the industry never recruited from. She taught them design. And she taught them, on the first day, before anything else, the thing Mrs. Coker had taught her. Mail your work to yourself. Date everything. Protect what you make as if it is the only thing you own. Because for people like us, sometimes it is. Several of them thought she was being paranoid. She let them think it. She knew that one day one of them would be standing in a room full of people who had already decided against her, and would reach into her bag and would be glad. He proposed to her a year and 2 months after the gala. Not with the dynasty, not with a transfer of assets, not with a grand public gesture in a ballroom. He had learned, expensively, what public gestures cost her. He did it in the small flat, the one with the wiring he had fixed, which she had refused to leave even after she could afford to leave it, because it was hers, bought coin by coin, and it was the one place where no man had ever pretended to be anything. He came in his own clothes. Not a driver's, not a billionaire's, just a man. "I am not going to offer you anything I own," he said. "You made it very clear that everything I own is the reason you could not trust me, and you were right. So I am going to offer you the only thing I have that is actually mine, the only thing I never faked." He was not good at this. She let him not be good at it. The truth, from now until I die, whatever it costs me, whatever it costs us, the truth, that is the ring, that is the whole dowry. It is not much. But it is the thing you asked for by the water, and I did not give it to you then, and I am giving it to you now, and I will keep giving it to you every day, and you can watch me do it. and your eyes will never have to lie to you again." Amara looked at him for a long time. From the doorway, an old man who had absolutely not been invited and had absolutely let himself in cleared his throat and muttered that some of them were not getting any younger, and could she please decide before he died of natural causes, which he insisted this time were real. "Papa," Amara said, without looking away from Tunde, "were you actually about to die?" "No," Chief Bello admitted. "Good," she said, and she said yes. They were married in a small ceremony, and she kept her own name on her own designs, and she went on running the mentorship program long after the babies came, and she went on mailing her work to herself out of a habit she would carry to her grave. On the morning of the wedding, she opened the wooden box on the plastic table one last time, and she took out the string of blue and white beads, chipped on one side, and she wore them. Cheap. Worthless to anyone. The only thing of her father's her mother had kept, and the thing that had, in the end, proven her innocence in a ballroom full of people who had already decided against her. She wore them, and she thought of her mother, who had scrubbed floors for 20 years, and never once been treated in life the way her daughter was about to be treated for the rest of hers, and she was glad, and she was sad. And both were true at the same time, the way the hardest things always are. She had not come into that family chasing wealth. She had come into it by spending her last 300 naira on bread for a hungry old man on a Tuesday morning, when 40 other people walked past. Her kindness opened the door. Her carefulness kept her standing when they tried to knock her down. And in the end, she was chosen not for her poverty, and not despite it, and not for anyone's money, but for exactly the thing she had been on the worst morning of her ordinary life. A person who stopped. A note before you go, from me to you. The tools that saved Amara in this story are real. Digital timestamps, file metadata, and independent forensic audits are used every single day to prove who truly created a piece of work and to expose the people who try to steal it. If you make anything designs, writing, music, code, the habit of dating your work and keeping records is not paranoia. It is the cheapest insurance you will ever own. Now, the law is not the same everywhere. Employment rights, intellectual property protection, and what counts as proof of authorship differ from one country to the next. And what protected Amara in her world may work very differently in yours. So if you are facing unfair treatment at work, or someone is trying to take credit for what you built, please do not look for your answer in a comment section. Speak to a qualified professional where you live. In the United States, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission can be reached at 1-800-669-4000. I am not a lawyer, and this is not legal advice. I am just someone who wanted to tell a story about how far a small, unwatched act of kindness can travel, and about the quiet, stubborn power of protecting what you make. Remember this, if you remember nothing else. You are never too poor to deserve respect, and you are never too small to stand tall. The seed you plant with your kindness today has a way of finding its way back to your own garden in a season you could never have predicted.